This morning's reading is from Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 36. Jesus walks on the water. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret, and when men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed.
Sarah, thank you very much. It was a dark and stormy night. That has become the paramount example of the cliched opening sentence in a novel. As I was thinking about this, it reminded this morning's passage reminded me of that. And as I was looking this up this week, I discovered that the phrase originates in a novel from 1830, a novel by Edward Bulwer-Lytton, and his novel is called Paul Clifford. It was a dark and stormy night. The rain fell in torrents, except at occasional intervals, where it was checked by a violent gust of wind which swept up the streets. I mean, it's all right. I think the American Literary Association in the year 2000 thought it was the 22nd best opening line. I mean, it's not a disaster, but there we go. It's also the opening line of every novel that Snoopy is trying to write. Those of you that remember the Peanuts cartoons, Snoopy is sat on top of his doghouse with his typewriter trying to write his novel, and it always begins, "It was a dark and stormy night." That's a terrible way to begin a story, says Lucy. So trite. Once upon a time. That's the way all good stories begin. Do that. Begin your story with "once upon a time." Once upon a time, it was a dark and stormy night. Of course, you all knew that was coming, didn't you? We're looking at one of the miracles of Jesus this morning, and miracles always point beyond themselves. You always need to understand something of the context around them to understand that to which they are pointing. The meaning of Jesus' walking on water. Well, we're beginning with another dark and stormy night, right at the beginning of the book of Genesis. I've added the first line. Give me a bit of... It was a dark and stormy night when God began to create the heavens and the earth. The earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the deep. The Spirit of God swept over the face of the waters, and God said. And then we get the narrative of creation. In Jewish consciousness, The swirling waters were the waters of chaos, unruly, unmanageable, out of which God then begins to bring order through the narrative of creation, creating land and stars and mountains, birds and all the rest of the story. But in that beginning idea in Jewish consciousness, the waters were symbolic of swirling chaos. Jewish people were not seafaring people, unlike, say, the Phoenicians or the Greeks around them. The Phoenicians and the Greeks built big boats for trading, and they would sail. They were seafarers. Interestingly enough, they almost always hugged the land, though. They were still very cautious about going out into the deep because of what lay there or going beyond. They would travel round the coastlines. The Jews weren't that. They had fishing boats. They would go out onto lakes to catch fish, but they never built any big sailing vessels. You see, to them, the sea was still this place of chaos, of fear. It's where the mighty Leviathan lived, who was waiting to swallow you up. The manifestation of evil itself and chaos was to be found in the depths of the water. We read in the book of Job. Job is praying about God. He is saying to his friends, this is what God is like. He alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea. He didn't just walk on them, he trampled them. There's this image of he defeated them, he laid waste to them, he was sovereign over them. This chaos in the water, God is sovereign. And in fact, the literal line for line, word for word translation of the Hebrew is he alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the back of the sea dragon. Are you beginning to picture this image in Jewish consciousness of the swirling seas as a place of fear? One other Old Testament reference before we move on, from the book of Daniel. Daniel's a book in the Old Testament, and in Daniel's story, he has a number of visions of the future. I, Daniel, saw in my vision by night the four winds of heaven stirring up a great sea. My friends, in Daniel's vision, it was a dark and stormy night again. And out of this swirling sea came four great beasts, each one different to the other. Daniel's vision is prophesying four empires that would come between the time of Daniel and the time of Jesus. And they did. Four great beasts who would lay waste and lay hold of the nation of Israel. There was the Babylonians. There was then followed by the Persians, then the Greeks, and then finally the Romans were there oppressing the nation of Israel. The four great beasts that came up out of this swirling, chaotic deep to oppress the Jewish people. Obviously, we are in the fourth of those empires in Jesus' time. It is the Roman Empire's turn. They have their oppressive boot on the neck of the people of Israel. And the Caesar at the time was Tiberius Caesar. If you go to Lake Galilee today, you might know of Tiberius as a city. You go to the city Tiberius. Well, he formed that city in AD 20. He was Caesar from 14 to 37, so from when Jesus was a teenager through to just after his death. Tiberius Caesar ruled the area. And interestingly, when John tells this story in his gospel of Jesus walking in the water, he doesn't say the Sea of Galilee. He uses its Roman name, Lake Tiberius. See, Tiberius is doing what all empires do. They're subsuming everything under their umbrella. All of the money has their faces on it. He's rebranded. It's no longer the Lake of Galilee. It is now Lake Tiberius. This is the lake that Jesus will be walking on top of in this story. Back to our reading. By this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, and the wind was against them altogether. Exactly. They've been pulling on the oars, and they are getting nowhere. Their hands are blistered. The light is failing. The clouds have blocked out the light of the moon. It's a terrifying, scary place to be. And they are making no progress to the other side of the lake. And then early in the morning, he, that's Jesus, came to them walking on the sea. Walking over the chaos, the violence, the oppression of empire. Jesus is trampling, in Job's words, all of that as he comes walking to them across the sea. The meaning of the miracle is that Jesus is sovereign over all of that. That he alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the sea. That he tramples the empire that enslaves, that oppresses, that seeks to hold everyone and everything captive. That as Jesus walks across the water, across the chaos, he is king over that chaos and the empire that is causing it. Daniel's vision would go on from the Old Testament. As I watched, the beast was put to death and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away. For I saw one like the Son of Man coming. The Son of Man is the phrase Jesus used to describe himself. 87 times in the Gospels he calls himself the Son of Man, identifying with this vision from Daniel. And to this Son of Man, to him was given dominion and glory and kingship, that all peoples, all nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship is one that shall never be destroyed. Friends, that is the meaning of the miracle. Whether you take it literally, whether you take it allegorically, I don't mind. Make your own mind up about that one. But this is the meaning behind the miracle. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear, wouldn't you? But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, do not be afraid." As well as the grand vision of Jesus walking and trampling over chaos and empire, I think there is something more personal here that we could each take. Because there are times in our own lives when we find ourselves in that place of chaos, in that place of fear, where everything is getting rough and chaotic, where it feels as if we are pulling on the oars with blistered hands and going backwards. Have you ever felt like that? The ghosts are all around you. And Christ comes to you and says, "Take heart. It is I, do not be afraid. I am with you. I am sovereign over the chaos. I might not take it away, but I am with you in it, standing on it." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He, that's Jesus, said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and started walking on the water and came towards Jesus. You have got to love Peter, haven't you? Impetuous, impulsive Peter. You discover his character as you read through the Bible. He's always the one who's there. He wants to be involved. He sees Jesus. He wants to imitate Jesus to his credit. Come on, Lord, if this is me, I want to get involved in this. If it's you, I want to get involved in this. Call me over. all Jesus does. He steps out of the boat, but when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and began to sink, and he cried out, "Lord, save me." There's an entirely different sermon here about the moment Peter takes his eyes off Jesus and sees the storm. Because you know, where we look can have an awfully big impact on how we perceive a situation. The optics. When Peter is looking at Jesus and walking towards him, he is in the zone, in control. As soon as he gets distracted by the fears and the wind and the wave and the chaos around, he begins to lose his confidence and begins to sink. And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" What's interesting here is that Matthew doesn't tell us the tone of voice that Jesus uses for this sentence. Modern writing might have, I think it's an adverb, I wasn't very good at grammar at school. Angrily, Jesus said. But he doesn't tell us. So I thought I would enlist the help of a friend. So Christy, if you don't mind joining us at the microphone here. I thought I'd do this myself, but then I realised we have a proper bona fide actress in our midst who is going to do this an awful lot better than I am, than I would. So, by the way, do look up Christy on IMDb after this is over. Proper, the real deal here, folks. So, Christy, I'm going to be the narrator. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, and you are Jesus, and your line, I'm sure you're good at remembering lines, is, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" First of all, could we have that line as if Jesus is angry? So I'm the narrator, and I don't know my line. So I've got to go back to the room. Right, we've got this. Here we go, double act. Just the one line. This is angry,
Just angry.
Jesus.
Okay.
Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him,
"You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Let's try that again. I like that. So that one more time. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him,
"You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
That has quite a meaning, doesn't it? Right, now let's try another one. Let's try him being disappointed. This time he's disappointed in Peter. Peter's let him down. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him,
"You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him,
"You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Totally different meaning. And the last one. Thank you, Christy. This is fantastic. The last one, if he's sympathetic towards Peter. So he's feeling sympathetic. Not disappointed, but sympathetic.
Right. It told me encouraging.
Encouraging's good. Yeah, encouraging's good. Encouraging. No, encouraging's better. The one I told you on the email. Let's do...
Right, I just did sympathetic.
Let's do encouraging.
Okay.
This is supposed
to be...
Yeah, you're
you've got
right, because the
this,
last one
you've
was
got
sympathetic.
this.
I've messed it up in my notes.
Okay.
Disappointing and sympathetic. We're going to do encouraging.
I can go with it, though.
No.
Okay.
You might be used to... You might be used to working with some very temperamental directors, but not here. We're going to go for encouraging. Jesus immediately reached out his hand, caught him, saying to him,
"You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him,
"You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Let's give Christy a round of applause. Brilliant. Yeah. That was a lot better than I'd have done it. Completely changes the meaning of that sentence, the tone of voice that it's delivered in, and we're not given any direction. So I wonder, when you read that reading in the past or when you heard it this morning, what tone of voice did you hear in your head? How did you imagine those words being said? Because I would suggest to you that's probably how you imagine God. Your image of God is somehow betrayed by your internal dialogue, your internal script, and how you imagine those words being spoken. Is God angry? Was God angry with Peter? Oh, you're a little faith. I'm not going to do it. Was he disappointed? Or is he encouraging? Just as a tiny aside, if you were studying this in academia, it would be called reader-centered criticism. It's how what we bring to the text affects how you understand it. And it's very powerful, and we are completely unaware of it most of the time. But that was a lovely, powerful example. I want to suggest to you that perhaps we might imagine the last one, an encouraging Jesus to Peter. I can't say the line anymore now, because I'm not going to do it. Why did you doubt? Why did you doubt? Come on, Peter. It also doesn't tell us what Peter doubted. Did he doubt Jesus? Is it, Peter, why did you doubt me? Or Peter, why did you doubt yourself? Why did you doubt that you could do this? That's the encouraging voice I hear. Oh, you have little faith. Why did you doubt yourself, Peter? Come on, man, you've got this. That's the one I like to imagine. Might I be reading something into the text that's not there? Maybe. But then so are you. So why not take mine? Actually, we make those sorts of judgments based on the character of Christ that we see revealed elsewhere in Scripture. So what you do is you look at the character of Jesus through the stories, and you think, actually, in line with his character, how is Jesus most likely to respond? And I've definitely got in my head, Jesus saying to him, "You've little faith, why did you doubt yourself? Come on, man, you've got this." Peter became frightened, the text tells us. Fear stops lots of us from doing all sorts of things, for being all that we could be, for doing lots sorts of things that we could do with our lives. Fear so often gets in the way. It's the barrier that stops us. Anything from that trivial taking on a marathon or skydiving through to important things in life. We all get up to that fear threshold and then, should I? No. And we make a decision either to go for it despite our fear. That's really what bravery is. Bravery is not fear being taken away. Bravery is doing something despite the feelings of fear. Or do we choose to let it limit us at those points? If I was looking for a way to apply this passage to all of our lives, whether we're Christians here or not, then I think I would want to challenge you with this today. That some of your greatest achievements and experiences are often found on the other side of your fears and failures. And what in your life at the moment are you afraid of that is holding you back? Where Christ might say to you, come on, Rick, you've got this. Come on, Antonia. Don't be afraid, you've got this. Because the greatest achievements in life, those times of greatest, I did it! They're the other side of the failures and the fears. If we live our lives small in fear and failure, we don't get those moments of yes. Wow! now be the moments of faith, moments of faithfulness, or jumping out of an aeroplane strapped to a skydiving instructor. I could tell you a story of a young 11-year-old boy. A young 11-year-old boy who was really anxious at school, quite often felt sick going to school, took a lot of encouragement from his parents to get into the classroom, particularly in the last couple of years of junior school. Was worried about not doing well enough. He got into the 11 plus exam and had a moment of real anxiety and panic, and had to be taken out by a teacher to sit in a classroom next door with the paper, give him 5 minutes to calm down, and then an extra 5 minutes at the end to do the exam. A little anxious kid who went on to have a crack at a PhD at Durham, age 52. Largely because he discovered drama and music. And that gave him a confidence to believe he could play another character and be something else and be better at a time when school cuts drama and music budgets. Or I could tell you about a 35-year-old guy who was in his first church, and it all began to fall apart around him. And he really thought he was the absolute failure at this job. Absolutely unable to ever do it again. Signed off work, sat on the couch at home, thinking, what the heck has he done? He's changed career, he's retrained, he's gone, and now he can't do the damn job that he's been trained for. It's not working. Utter failure. And then through the encouragement of friends and community, and many of you here, found healing and recovery and wholeness and a second chance. And stands here this morning on the other side of that failure, able to stand and preach again. Our fears and our failures do not define us. They are not who you are. And sometimes our greatest experiences are found on the other side of those moments. When Jesus says, don't be afraid, you've got this. And forgive me, I've used two personal examples, but you have others, I'm sure. And that would be true for Peter. Peter, who's sinking in the water at this point in the story, who would go on to fail again, continue to be impetuous, continue to put his foot in it, would get things wrong, would deny Jesus very dramatically 3 times, and yet would be reinstated, would preach to 3,000 people or more on Pentecost and see them all converted, who would be given the keys to the kingdom and be the original pope, was this Peter, who at this moment is sinking and afraid. And a compassionate Jesus who reaches out his hand and says, Peter, why did you doubt yourself? You've got this. How about you? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. This is the first time in Matthew's Gospel they will worship Jesus directly. They worshipped him. You are the Son of God. Let's be quiet for a moment. Lord God, we invite you this morning to speak to each one of us here. Whether we sit here because something is in front of us and we're afraid, or whether we sit here with something behind us and we feel a failure. May each one of us hear your words to Peter. And may we hear them in your encouraging tone. Richard, Ian, Sue, Judy, do not be afraid. You've got this. And help us to walk with you through those storms and challenges of life, knowing that you are beside us and with us, to experience the fullness of life that's found on the other side of all of those fears and failures and challenges that hold us back. The life that you would have for us, the life in all its fullness, the life that is the gift of God and that is found in Jesus, whom we worship this morning. Amen.